Welcome. Pleased to have you join us. Don't adjust your sets if you're watching on YouTube. You can see my hideous face because this is going to be a little bit different. If you've been keeping up with the podcast, you'll know that we started a couple of short years ago doing kind of reviews of actual episodes and hit or miss various things in the Trek universe. But we are expanding. You'll have noticed that we've started doing Eagle Moss product reviews. And hopefully, if you're watching this, you will have seen that we did a little special episode with a review of the Strange New Worlds pilot and just our spoiler-free thoughts on that. And so this is going to be the first in a whole new range of things that we're doing, which is going to be interviews with people from around the Trek cosmos, shall we say. Before I go any further, I will introduce my co-host, DK, who's once again here with us. Hi, DK.
Hiya there, Mike. And for the purpose of the listeners at home, be thankful you cannot see my hideous face.
Yes, we'll have to just imagine he looks like Chris Pratt under the mask, I guess. But
I can deal with that.
Well, let's not be too sure. But yeah, so as I say, this is going to be the first in what will hopefully become a kind of an ongoing thing. No scheduled timings or anything, but whenever we can, throw you some good interviews. And we've been able to land a bit of a coup, a bit of a doozy for our first interview. We are going to be joined in a few minutes by Mr. Dave Blass, the Emmy-nominated production designer who's worked on various things like Constantine, Preacher, Justified, but most importantly, perhaps for our purposes, he worked on the second season of Star Trek Picard. He's responsible for the fleet of ships, at least in part, that you saw, for redesigning, again, with other people, the new Stargazer, various props and things. And if you're not following him on Twitter, you should be, because it's a treasure trove. So, yeah, we are going to throw over in just a few seconds to that and introduce you to Dave Blass and hopefully get talking about Star Trek Picard and his career in general. And hopefully it makes for a good episode. So take it away, other me. Massive fans, definitely, and massive geeks. So very appreciative of all of the Easter eggs and bits and pieces that you spoiled us with in that second season. So,
and think about there's probably dozens that you never saw. So it's a good fun.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to going back and finding them when I get the Blu-rays though, and I can freeze frame and stuff. So.
Well, we put tons of stuff that never actually gets in the show. You're like, wait, you didn't see that whole half of the room, and you know. So
I see.
It happens.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Well, what we did get was very good, so appreciate that. And it's very good to see a fellow fan working on these shows as well, so you can tell the passion's there. So that's good. Awesome. Well, we've done a little intro and everything already, so we're ready to just get jump straight in with some questions, if that's all right with you. Yeah.
Fire away.
Awesome. The first question is going to be from my co-host DK. So DK, do you want to fire the first question at Mr. Blass?
Sure. Hi, Dave. You okay?
Yep, great.
Nice one. I ask, was there any particular recall that made you want to work in Hollywood? And what took you from working under Roger Corman's wing to Star Trek, would you say?
I think, early Star Trek, I mean, I grew up with it. I was born in 1968, so it's like Star Trek has always been in my life. And watching it on TV, and it's just the idea that someone got to create those things. And unfortunately, in that time period, there wasn't this behind the scenes thing that we have now where everyone knows that there's people who actually that's their job to create the cinema and everything. You just sit there and look at this. Oh my God, that's so amazing. Look at these people. And it wasn't until Star Wars came out. And again, sorry, I'm a fan of both franchises.
No, that's fine.
They had these behind the scenes things, and they showed all of the people creating this stuff. And I was like, wait, you can do that? There's people and I'm like, that just really excited me. And I remember, I think I'm like my 17th time of watching Star Wars, clocking I'm trying to figure out who these people are that get to do this. And I clocked the name Joe Johnston, and he was the art director on Star Wars. I think it was Empire, but I was like, oh, art director. That's the guy I want to be. I want to be Joe Johnston. And funny enough, I ran into him at the premiere for Captain America, and he was there, and no one was paying attention. So I'm like, oh my God, I got to finally actually go. And I went up and talked to him. I said, thank you for your inspiration and doing this. And he's like, dude, don't blame me for this. It's like he's just such a wonderful guy. And then I talked to him for a bit, and then I have a friend who's a mutual friend, and I just at that point I had been working on a bunch of different things. But it turns out that Joe was a big fan of a show I did, Justified. And then he found out that he did that, and he sent me a copy of his Joe Johnston sketchbook signed. He's like, oh, my God, you do Justified. I love that show. And I'm like, that's such a great thing. So I think that was really the where it started. And then there was a lot of roads to get there. And eventually I ended up at Corman. And that was just, at the time, it's just, people always ask, how do you get your foot in the door in Hollywood? It's very much, there is no one way, there is no path to Hollywood. So at that point in time, that was a well-established, this is what you do, because so many people from James Cameron to Bill Paxton and all these talented people had come out of Corman. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to try that. And that for me worked out well.
Right.
It's cool. So I wanted to get a bit specific with my first question, if that's okay. And it's I have to ask the big question, basically, which is what was it like working on designing a new USS Stargazer and working with legends like Drexler and Okuda? And how did that break down in terms of like who was doing what, especially working, I'm presuming, remotely over Zoom and stuff?
What was it like? It was frightening. It was just like you're sitting there going, because there's the worst thing of, following your dream and then not getting to do what you set out to do. It's getting to follow your dream, getting to do what you wanted to do, because that was my dream. I wanted to go to Hollywood and do Star Trek. And here I am getting to do it. I'm like, damn, what if I fuck it up? So it's like, it's that thing of like, here's the ball, it's like, it's your game and whatever. So I'm smart enough to know that I'm not smart enough. And I think that that's one of my great gifts is that, when I'm designing a team, I'm like, well, let's find the best people to surround yourself with and then collaborate with those people, listen to those people, empower those people, and then kind of create this hive mind thing, not to go Borg on us, but to sit there and do that. So when I started the show, John had worked on season 1. And I started working with him, and then the other set designer Scott Schneider was on, and then we were coming in at the beginning, and there was no Stargazer. At the beginning of pre-production, there was no ship. We're not going to be on a ship. Not going to happen. I'm like, okay, and I told the producers, I'm like, but if that changes, and we end up going on a ship, I need a bigger boat. I mean, I need more people. I need more time. We need more time. And that was kind of going into the COVID world, because initially they go back in time on La Sirena. And that was all. So we started prep in early January of 2020, and this is before COVID. And then it just started spiraling into a bunch of different directions. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we need a new ship. And it's like, okay, but at this point, Doug Drexler's not available. Mike Okuda's not available. Mike's on For All Mankind. Doug's on Orville, and everyone else in the galaxy is taken. So that at that point, I had John, and John and I started riffing on it and coming up with ideas. And then I started reaching out. I'm like, who is available? And we were limited by the studio to only hire people from America. Because a lot of the other guys that I wanted to work with were in Canada. So I'm like, and that literally, that little impetus of like, okay, I need, more things. And it's like, and then you started, and I had some amazingly talented concept artists available, but they weren't Starship guys. And I guess, and as anyone knows, there's a big difference between a Star Wars ship and a Star Trek ship, or a Star Trek ship. And any other, an alien ship. And it's that thing, it's like you give people the thing and they're like, they start designing this stuff and you're going, have you ever watched Star Trek? And again, these are very talented guys. It's just, they did. So then that literally prompted me to start going, I need more Starship guys. Who has starships? And I started looking around, and that decision brought me to the Star Trek Online people, where I'm going, oh, here's all these talented guys who are designing Star Trek ships on the regular. What do we do here? And that was even before we had a giant fleet and we needed all that stuff. So that kind of brought me to Thomas and Hector and that team. So then for a while they were involved, and they were, and again, this was in the COVID world, and we're all trying to figure out how we're going to make this work, because they're working on online, but we all want to do it and it's going to be cool. So we did that. But then when COVID hit and that shutdown hit, that just kind of that changed everything, and everyone was sitting at home going, we're bored. And I'm like, anyone want to work on a starship? And Doug came over, and Mike Okuda, because that was my first thing. I reached out to everyone who had been disenfranchised over the years and said, hey, I'm doing Star Trek. I like you guys. Let's find a way to make this work. And there was no pushback on it. It wasn't like everyone says, oh, don't bring him back. It's like, I think that people had moved past them to the point of like forgetting that they were there or whatever. So then we brought in Doug, and then, all of a sudden we're combining, because John is phenomenal, but John is strictly a 2D, and he still works by hand mostly. His concepts are, and just next level brilliant, which was amazing for the first month, because he was the next door over for me. So I would like literally walk into his office and sit and watch him work and fanboy on him. And then when he left the room, I'd steal his blue line sketches. But then when COVID hit, everyone was working from home. So then Doug was able to come in. So then Doug would translate John's 2D into 3D. And then we'd all sit down and what do you think about this? And then, so Doug would make a change, John would make a change, would look at them, I'd make some judgments, I'd do some sketches and say, what do we do? Just simple stuff from that, like Doug would do things like the saucer. It's like we sat there and it's like, okay, we got the Enterprise E, which is a very elongated, we got the D, which is elongated in a different direction. We've got the classics round saucer section. Where does our world fit in that? And it's just, we went and played around with it, and then all the different variations. So John had come up with 2 really cool variations on designs on the Stargazer, one of which sparked my interest, because where the saucer section was, the engineering section behind it was raised up a little bit higher, so that when you were looking out the observation lounge, you'd see the ship out the back. Because normally you just see space. And it was like, okay, well, that would be interesting, because we're trying to figure out ways to cost effectively do stuff, but every time we add a green screen outside of a window, people would freak, oh my God, it's going to cost $1 billion. What if we did even a backdrop like we would do in regular movies? It's like, it's a building across the street, except it's the back of the ship. And that was our initial idea, with a little bit of projection up in the corner. And then we eventually brought in Todd Marks, and he's like, no, I can just project the whole thing in a Starfield. And then we tweaked it accordingly. So everyone liked that concept. But, John and Doug primarily did the exterior. Then we had other people doing the interior. So it's a massive thing and then the coordination of it, because it's like, it's one thing if everyone's sitting in the same room and putting their drawings up on the board, everyone can go, okay, this and this. But really, I'm more like the conductor playing the orchestra, going, okay, this has to be this, and this all has to match. And so while they're doing the exteriors, I'm working on the interiors with other guys, and then working on physical construction of things like the chateau. And so it's a big deal. So, but it was, for me, it was like, and you will see this more in season 3. As I was able to bring in more people. I mean, Mike Okuda was only, even though he was integral, he was only on season 2 for a very short period of time. He gave us a massively detailed breakdown of LCARs that then Twisted Media took over. But he was on For All Mankind for 90% of the time. So he was just able to give us a little bit of time. And then going into season 3, he was retired. He's like, I finished For All Mankind. I'm retired and I'm done. I'm like, are you really done? It's like, you're like the Tom Brady. It's like, we're going to pull you out of retirement for one last go and work that where he came out. And unfortunately, we were not able to bring Denise on, and she is so talented and such an amazing person. In season 1, there was not actually a graphic designer on Star Trek Picard, which I find stunning. So budgetarily, the idea of bringing on Jeffrey Mandel and Mike Okuda was like, oh, we went from having no graphic designers to 2 graphic designers. And then it became, Alan Kobayashi came on, and then it became 3 and 4. So it became quite but again, we needed a bigger boat to get everything done. So, but my thing was, we reached out to Mike, we reached out to Mike Okuda, we reached out to Doug, we reached out to Rick Sternbach, which we used some of Rick's artwork, and there's a fun little design in season 3 that he did that had never been seen that we brought to life. And, we let everyone know, it's like, hey, the shop is open. We want to work with you. Tim Earl worked with us, and just a lot of people came out of the woodwork to say, okay, yeah, let's we'd like to do Star Trek again, and we made it a good place for them.
That's awesome. I think as fans, I definitely, I'm speaking for myself, as a fan, I definitely appreciated it, and I could see the kind of the influence, like you said, of people like Michael Okuda on the L cars and the various ship designs, everybody from, as you said, Johnny Eaves to yourself and the others you were working with. So that's awesome. DK, sorry, did you have your next question ready?
I'm just going to say, I'm wanting to. I know you hinted at the season 3 thing. Part of me is screaming, I want to know what it is. But with regards to the design, with regards to the design work, you've obviously been involved in several shows based on existing properties. How much leeway are you allowed? Were you allowed to develop your own thoughts, or do you have to stick to pre-existing designs or what is on the printed page as much as possible?
I think that different producers are different things, and for the intellectual properties that I've done things like The Boys and Constantine and Preacher and things of that nature. Different producers run different things, and some are less visual. They want you to show them 10 ideas and they'll pick one of them. We had one big pitch meeting with Secret Hideout and Alex Kurtzman, where we showed them the Stargazers and kind of walked them through what we had planned on doing. And then, again, I think I've shared a lot of it on social media, the previs where we do walkthroughs and illustrations, and that stuff would go out every week, if not multiple times a week. The producers like, what does it look like? And then also coordinating with all the other departments, like all the integrated lighting, all the shiny floors, that's, the cinematographer saying, this is stuff we want, we have to have it. And it's that thing of going, okay, well, showing them literally, it's like, we want, a ribbon of light going around the window. We want a ribbon of light here. We want a thing. And then doing sending it to the concept guys. Okay, here's the notes from the DPs. They want this. We want to put a light here. We want a lens flare light here. So then it's a lot of collaboration on that thing. And you win some battles, you lose some battles. I mean, I don't think it was never in my brain to put the carpet on the bridge. But it was like, it was not that I didn't think of it. It's like, okay, I get it, but it was, I also wouldn't have gone with the shiny floor. I would have gone more of something like a tactical, like something more matte, more textured, like a space. And I kept on saying, terms like, I want space diamond plate. It's like something like that would be that has some texture, that has some reality to it, so that if you're on a spaceship, that's gonna. But again, I think the Berman Trek had a very definitive design feeling to it. The Herman Zimmerman and his team did an amazing job, and it all has a cohesive look. And I think that it's going to be hard for people doing the Alex Kurtzman version of Trek not to do that, because they have a certain design aesthetic as well. So they like it glossy, they like it shiny, and again, that's their choice. And I think that the Stargazer looks amazing, and I think that we expand on the season 3 stuff quite a bit. And as we are not time traveling, we're all in our prime timeline and doing that. So it's going to be very exciting.
That's cool.
Great.
Awesome. Yeah, I really love the design of the Stargazer. Obviously, that's a completely new build, the Stargazer. It's although it is based on an existing design, but I noticed that you did bring in, as you were already mentioning, a lot of the Star Trek Online ships that you were able to make canon, and you worked with a lot of existing designs, whether it be like the Akira or the Sovereign or the Luna class for the first time in live action. So what was it like bringing these assets that had only been seen in like 2 dimensions, I guess, and making them part of like this 3-dimensional fleet?
Yeah. Well, it got into the idea of what's called synergy, and it hit me once I started working with Thomas and Hector at Star Trek Online, talking with Ben over at Eagle Moss. I'm like, guys, we got to get all on the same page, and we got to do all these things where we're like, you have all these different groups that aren't talking, and I'm like, if the Star Trek Online world takes place in the same time period, in the same world as Picard, why aren't we using the same ships? Why they're using our ships? Why aren't we using some of their ships? And then what happened to all these other ships in the fleet and the whole idea? And again, I don't want to speak to the Zheng fleet and that whole situation, but I'm like, we want to do a Star Trek thing, and if there's a cost-effective way to do this and to wrangle this, we should find a way to do that, and then also bring all these ships, because when I started the show, I was reaching out to Ben at Eagle Moss, and he sent me out a whole case of ships, and I have all these cool things. I'm like, I want to see what's been done before, so that we aren't copying something without knowing it, because again, someone like John Eaves has been doing this for 25 years. He will often start drawing something and not realize that it's based on something he's already drawn before, or riffing off that. And again, I wanted our ships to not feel like Discovery, not feel like, some other show, but they need to feel like an extension of, and that was always my thing. It's like, we need to not reinvent the wheel. I want to make it look like this is Nemesis 20 years later. So it's like, what would be on a ship, and that would be the same thing. And again, started with like some of the big doors, the hexagon shaped doors. I said, doors in my house haven't changed in 20 years. Why would they change it on a starship? Why, what things would stay the same? And, we would look at the Enterprise E and go, okay, well, how do we evolve that rather than change that? What would be the next evolution of it? What would be the thing? And also, the understanding of the design aesthetic. So the same thing with the ships. It's like, well, we have the Sovereign class. It'd still be around. There'd be Sovereign. There'd be Ross class. There'd be Akiras. So it's like these, and again, it's also in the budgetary world, because it's already been established with canon. It's like, they didn't have the money to build new models every week. So they would use, the original series movie things. You got the Bird of Prey. Well, the Bird of Prey has been around for 100 years now. And all these other ships have been around for centuries. So it's like we've established, because of budget, that these ships last a long time. So there's no reason not to go and find these ships. And also because the online people have done such a beautiful job updating them and designing them and working on them. I just didn't have the time, manpower, or bandwidth to give to all those ships. I was focusing on the hero ships that we had to do, the Stargazer and the Borg ship and whatnot. So it was that thing of going, oh, here's a gift, makes a lot of sense, solves a lot of problems. Make the main thing the main thing.
Awesome. Yeah, fair enough. GK, did you have another?
I was going to say, as a player of Star Trek Online, it was a big treat to see them on screen.
Yeah, and that was my thing. It's like, you get a lot of people who are, they have a Gagarin or one of these ships, and it's like, how cool is that? It's like, here I have and that's one of the things I went the simple route, which is Eagle Moss. Which are your most popular ships? Star Trek Alum. What are your most popular ships? Put the most popular ships. I'm like, is it fan service? 100%. But it's also, there's a reason that those ships are popular. They're well designed. They're cool looking. And so I'm like, okay, and and they harken back to the what people love about the show. I'm like, this is an easy solution that solves a lot of problems. So I think, again, when you say fan service, it sounds like a negative thing. Like, I don't know, make people happy in a very simple way. So I think that fleet that you see in the first episode and then in the finale was a very simple way to make a lot of people happy. And I'm like, I think that if you can do that and not mess with things, and also it helps things, and I'm like, I think that that's a big win.
It helps world building, I think, as well. People underestimate that, because it does. It helps the thing feel more real if it looks like something logically that would take place after Nemesis, as opposed to just a random ship you've dropped in out of nowhere, I guess.
100%. So, and again, I think that the reason that Star Trek exists is because of the fans. I think we've seen that over the last 40 years, and the fans are playing the online game. If you can empower those people and encourage those people and bring them in and saying, here, do this thing. And it was such a simple thing. I mean, it's like people who don't know ships and everything, they don't care. They're like, okay, they're ships. But people who do, oh my God, that's a Nova class ship. Or, it's like, it's like, and, and just, it was just a simple thing for me to reach out to Sean, who designed the Luna class Titan, and just say, hey, we want to use your ship, and hey, let's have you design something new. So we brought him in to help on the World Razor there. And again, not a big deal for me to just go throw someone a bone, but I'm like, he's a talented guy, he's passionate, and that's what I was looking for, because I think I have a lot of talented people, but if you don't have the passion for Star Trek, it's not something that can be taught. And it's like something like working with Doug Drexler or any of the online guys. You don't need to tell them where the phaser strips go. They're going to tell you. And again, I'm smart. They're smarter. So I'm smart enough to hire the guys who are smarter. And that's the great thing about them. So
that's brilliant. I was going to say obviously we're big fans of the design work here, but we understand. I mean, I've seen that on social media. You're putting together a book on the art of the show. Any idea when we might see that in stores? Is it going to be season 2, or are you waiting for season 3 to come out? Or
I'm putting it. I reached out to the book people at the beginning of season 2, and I said, "Hey, I'd be interested in working with you guys on a book on the art of Picard." And and that way I could do if we want to do this, I can be interviewing people as we're doing the show and putting it together as we're doing it, and then we can do a final edit, and then it would be done by the end of season 3, rather than we start thinking about it. And everyone's like, no. I'm like, well, but and they're like, no. I'm like, no. And I'm like, okay, I'll shut up then. And then, and that's where it's at. And then I'm like, okay. And I'll start sharing stuff. And then people are like, oh my God, concept art. And I think it becomes one of those things that people don't wanted, like a book on that. It's like, I'm going to end up doing it myself. And then someone's going to go, we want to do it. And I'm like, here it is. It's done. So I did a show called Preacher. And they did a book of the art and making of Preacher. And they didn't call me, interview me, or ask me to be involved, and used all my photography, all my, never even heard about the project until someone sent me the book. And they're like, anyway, we can get you to sign this. I'm like, what is it? And they're like, it's the making a Preacher book. I'm like, never heard of it. So, I'm putting it together. So, because, I think that way it gets done properly. And, and that was, So again, whether it comes to be, I'm still going to have it, put it together. And then, it's like, if they end up hitting me up, then they'll have a completed piece. But it would be after, because Picard's 3 seasons, there's no reason to do it between season 1 and 2. It would probably be a whole thing on the art of the series.
Yeah,
that's fair enough. I would love to see something like that, because I'm loving all the things you've been sharing on social media and things like the sort of the new ships, and it looks like they're already on like a plaque, and it's got the little logos and everything on it. So just to have like a high definition version of that in a book, I think I would love that. It would be very much a Futurama take my money situation. But awesome. It seems like a complete no brainer, but
a lot of these things, they're very niche markets, and they get to run the numbers of. But also, we're in a world where companies can print up just as many as they need. It's not one of these things where they need to print up $50,000 in order to get a run. Now we do short run books and things of that nature. But again, it's I don't think anyone's going to knock until the season 3 again, because it's such a big endings season. You're going to want to include all those bits in it. So I haven't really been pushing it. I've just been compiling it and such.
I'm loving all these teasers for season 3, but fair enough.
Yeah.
Right. So,
give it to me now.
Well, it's hard because, it's like, when you're working on something, I mean, we were working on season 2 and season 3 for almost 2 years. So for that amount of time, as someone who's in the industry, you're seeing everyone share all their stuff that they're working on and all these other things. And I'm like, and they're like, what are you working on? I'm like, I'm on Picard. And they're like, oh, is that ever coming out? I'm like, shut up. It's like, it's coming out. It's coming out. And then it was literally the week that the show premiered, we wrapped season 3. So it was within a very short amount of time. It's like you go from, that thing of normally you can be on a show and the show's airing and you're working with the same crew and everyone's excited. There used to be that live tweeting thing that we do. But literally 2 years of finishing working on the show, and then the show premieres and like everyone's gone, and you're like, oh, I get, So it wasn't a great time to share with everyone, and we didn't have that kind of celebration moment of getting to see everything together. So, but it's again, season 3 is amazing. I love season 2. And season 1 is great. So, I mean, I think with the fan base, it's challenging because there's a world now, especially on Twitter, where, it's great that people get a voice. Anyone has a voice, but the negativity tends to get amplified across all things, whether it's politics or fan bases and things of that nature. And I made it a point to engage with people who don't like things. I'm like, hey, if you don't like it, that's fine. I can completely understand it. It's like, there's a lot of stuff I don't like, but don't be mean. It's like, you can say, oh, that sucks. I'm like, okay, you get an opinion. I disagree. And, but what do you not like? What do you think? And then on some things I can sit there and go, yeah, okay, maybe you have a point. Maybe you don't. But I think being rude to people, being rude to you is the wrong way. It just makes people do that. With so many of the people I've tried to engage with them, I'm like, hey, what do you like about the show? What do you not like about the show? Because, any show that I watch, I can sit there and go, that's a thing. And I'll be the guy in the meeting and says, hey, why don't we do this? And this is a thing. And then everyone looks at me like, shut up. But I still say it because, I'm trying to make a better Star Trek show.
Yeah.
I think we appreciate having that voice in the room, to be perfectly honest, as fans, like I said, because, it makes a world of difference. It does, even if it is just a little geeky thing for maybe a niche audience. But, speaking of which, and just removing the conversation away from spaceships to a slightly smaller area, you obviously worked on a lot more things like interiors and props and things. And when I saw episode 2 and saw that General Picard room, which must have been like hog heaven for you. How did you decide sort of what to put where, whose skulls was going to be there, and what kind of ideas were going to go into that room?
We started out, that was my idea as scripted. It was armor. And we walk into the room and, there was like suits of armor. And I was like, okay. Because two things, I'm like, I was looking at things from what's going to be coolest and what is going to be cost effective. Because, we have a budget. I'm sitting there going, okay, we need to create 12 custom suits of armor for all these different races. And they're going to be really unique. And then I'm like, but we've never seen them before. So it's like, what's the? We did, and that's where if you look at the room, there's the Cardassian breastplate, and we're like, okay, well, we have that. But we kind of went like, yeah, if we have to do that times 12, it's going to end up looking like the Michael Keaton Batman room where it's like the wicker guy and all that. It's like, and it's not going to have anything. I'm like, if this is really if you're really trying to land the scene. It's the bring me the head of my enemy and put it on a pike. It's very Game of Thrones-ish. And it was just like hit people over the head of this is who this guy is. And initially the skulls weren't like plop in the middle of the room because it kind of didn't make any sense. They were like along the border. But that, again, it became more of a, okay, we need to make this point very quickly, and this is the scene. So we went, what are the most recognizable races, how we do it, and then I worked with Neville Page, and he's created them and had them, I think, combination of 3D printed and sculpted, and then we extrapolated that to the rest of the room, where we had the weapons display, and again, when I pitched the idea, they're like, oh, we don't want it to look like, like the Avengers or a John Wick thing. I go, no. It's not a, I'm going to grab this gun and go kill someone. It's so I sent them a scene from the movie Wall Street, where Gordon Gekko was showing someone his collection of antique guns. And he had them in these display cabinets with little things, I'm like, that's what we're doing. So it's going to be the history of weaponry in Star Trek, which is a lot of great little Easter eggs, but also we do have a lot of these in the archives. We did have a bunch of them in props. So we had, or we could recreate them, and it would be just a cool background for all these things to bring them all together. And then pepper in other different things like the World Racer painting and the Borg Slayer painting. And
awesome. So it was good. I did notice as well that you included the Torchbearer armor from Discovery as one of the little suits of armor that came from that initial idea, which not everyone might have loved, but I really appreciated as somebody who kind of likes that design. So,
when you're standing, you cannot actually appreciate that piece unless you are standing in front of it. It is so intricate, so well done. It is beautiful and got so little screen time that it's criminal. And Neville is just, I was a huge fan of Neville's work before working on the show with it. So to see that in person, and then it's just sitting there going, that's all you're going to, and I'm like, no. I mean, we have it. It's sitting there. It's free. Put it in there. It's like, and especially since we were already in the thing of going, we're in the 25th century and we're creating armor. Okay, great. There's a suit of armor. It's free. And, so that was like one of the first things we grabbed. And then we pivoted to the skulls. But I think that they had the Torchbearer in mind when they were coming up with the scene. And then we pivoted to the heads, which I think worked out really great.
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just about to say, I mean, obviously you've given us a couple of teasers about season 3. Now that it's finished wrapping, are there any plans to move over to another show in the Trek universe? Is there anything that you're working on that, as of this moment you can't talk about, or, by all means give us an exclusive if you'd like?
No, I'm actually monumentally unemployed, which is why I can do podcasts in the middle of the day. So lucky you guys. But no, I did move to Toronto where they shoot the other Star Trek shows, but I am not on their list of designers at the moment. So if that changes, I up to them. So again, I think that people, outside the business, they forget that for artists like myself and Doug Drexler and Mike Okuda, we have a passion for Star Trek and design and everything. But in the bigger picture, it's a job, and I say that not in a it doesn't matter way. There's a person who has my job that is working on Strange New Worlds. There's a person who has my job that is working on Discovery. I want them to keep their jobs. I don't want them to lose their job. So it's not that thing of going, oh, well, hire Dave Blass. It's like, no, they have people, very talented individuals who are doing amazing work. And I hope they continue to do amazing work. So if something doesn't work out or whatever, I'd love to work on more Star Trek, of course. But, it's that thing of it. It's not that easy. And, when people say, oh, well, why didn't you hire Mike? Well, Mike Okuda was on another show. Doug was on another show. So it's not always possible to get the dream team put together because everyone's doing other things and other commitments and whatnot. So, it's like, it's challenging. And then also, it's that thing of going, okay, well, if I take another job, then Star Trek all of a sudden has someone available. It's like, well, do I leave that job and screw that relationship to jump on Star Trek? So For me working on Star Trek, you have to thank Marvel actually, because I was doing Marvel's Ghost Rider, and they pulled the plug on that, and then I was able to, a month later, got a call from Picard. So, had I been on Ghost Rider, I wouldn't have got the call from Picard, and there you go. So it's a challenge making everything work, and then making everything work in between seasons as well, because quite often, you're on a show for 6 months, and then they go on high, especially with all these streaming shows in the short seasons. Then they go on hiatus, and then you got to go find another job. And if that job does not line up, then it's hard to come back and keep seasons going and whatnot.
Yeah, but if the phone was to ring and they were
I was going to ask with regards to.
Sorry, I was just going to say.
The phone rings. Yeah, the phone rings. I got all my Star Trek books ready in a box, ready to go.
Just as if they say, like, we're launching the Section 31 show, the Starfleet Academy show, and we need a good production designer, maybe then we can hopefully see your work on those, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing. It's possible. I would love to. Whether they want to work with me again, that's up to them. Again, I think a lot of the industry is as much. You're probably about 50%. Or 40% of the industry is your work. The other is your how well you play with others and how people like working with you. So it's always a challenge. So as I said, I just show up every day, try to do the best job I can, and create the best version of whatever show I'm working on.
Yeah.
DK did actually have a question on Ghost Rider that you brought up, so I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, you're involved in the MCU working on that show before the plug was pulled, as you say. Can I ask how far into production development was, and do you have anything that you really wish the audience would have gotten to see with regards to that?
I would have loved them to see Gabriel Luna portray the character. I think he was a brilliant actor. I think he brought a lot to the show, to the character. Wonderful guy to work to just interact with, and I think that it would have been a very cool show. I don't know the politics or why or the hows and whatever. But we were on it long enough that we planted corn, and the corn went from a corn seed to a 10-foot corn stalk, and then they pulled the plug. Wow. So we were dangerously close to starting to shoot. And again, there was just a lot. As I said, it's like anything else, a lot of politics. Everyone involved were really wonderful to work with. Marvel was great to work with. It was when it becomes a big Megillah like Marvel and Hulu and this and that, and then with all these different, and that was right in the time when Marvel was pulling off of Netflix, and there's a lot of moving pieces in these bigger shows, and I think a lot of people are trying really hard to make things work, but sometimes they don't. So again, I wish we were able to do it, and I wish Gabriel was able to give it his performance. I think it would have been amazing.
I agree. I really loved Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4, and I especially loved Gabriel as Robbie. I've actually got some pictures that I may put up on the podcast of when I meet a couple of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. guys at a convention, and I was wearing the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider jacket because I was obsessed with that character for a while. But
I literally was sitting in the room right when they pulled the plug, and I walked through the room and I saw the jacket sitting there and going, "Do I make that disappear?" They don't need it anymore.
That's fair enough. On a similar note to that, because obviously you've worked on a lot of kind of geeky things that we obviously there's a little bit of overlap there as Star Trek fans with other things that are geeky. And I had a question about you've mentioned you worked on the Constantine show,
yes.
The Matt Ryan version. I just have to know, as the production designer on that show, is it you or someone else that was responsible for placing a little Dr. Fate helmet Easter egg on one of the sets there?
That was done. That was in the pilot prior to me, so I did not have.
Oh, okay.
So I did. So a lot of times, with designers, that when they do the pilot, the first episode, one person does that and then hands it off to someone else. And I have handed shows off before, like The Boys. I did the first season and then handed that off. On Constantine, I didn't do the pilot. On Preacher, I didn't do the pilot. I did the pilot for Quantico, but handed the show off. So it really, they want different people to do different things. So it's it really, but we added a lot of things. But yeah, Constantine's one of my biggest regrets, because but when the show got canceled, we had really finally gotten our legs on how to do it, who the character was, what we were doing with the show, because it started out in one way and then we went and we all just kind of got into a groove, and then they yanked it out from under us, and it was a much better show than the ratings gave us credit for. I think that it had been on something like a Netflix or something else, but on NBC at 10 o'clock on a Friday night was just a good way to kill it.
Yeah. As happened with Star Trek, actually, weirdly enough, bringing it full circle, isn't it? Yeah. So, fair enough. DK, did you have any other questions?
I was going to say, you've worked on quite a few what people would term geeky projects, genre shows, comic book, sci-fi, that kind of thing. Is that something you're naturally drawn to, being a fan of Star Trek, or is it by design, or is it kind of coincidence?
I would do it by design. I mean, those are the fun type of projects I've done. Lots of different things. People can look at my resume and whatnot. Things, I did Justified for 6 seasons, 5 seasons, something like that. And that is completely opposite. It was gritty, dark, small town America. I did Longmire. I did Rectify. So I used to do a lot of cop and prison shows. But yeah, I prefer to do high concept, cool design, because who wouldn't? I mean, that's kind of, but a lot of people don't. They like to do, Victorian period pieces. They like to do, but also it comes down to the thing. It's like, it's what you get hired to do. So, I mean, when I was doing shows like Justified, they're not going to pick up the phone and call me to do the boys, because they're like, yeah, you do gritty, based in reality shows. We want, high con. So you really have to transition. And I think one of the shows that helped me do that was Preacher, because I got Preacher because I could do the gritty Texas, I had done Longmire, I did Justified. So Preacher was kind of an extension of that, but it had a bit of that comic book stuff in it. So, and also that was my first project with Seth Rogen and working with him.
Goldberg.
Yeah, no, thank you. So then they were able to bring me onto The Boys, which then made that. But I don't think without that transition piece of the Preacher, it wouldn't have happened. So, it's, but also it's that thing of going, you could do a lot of things, but you can work on a ton of sci-fi shows and things of that nature, and then you work on Star Trek. But if you don't know Star Trek, I mean, it's like it's talking with someone on the crew. They're like, "Oh, I've never watched Star Trek before." I'm like, "You should. It's great."
Exactly.
But it's that thing of going, just because this, it's the passion, and as I told my team, I said, Star Trek is not a fantasy show. It's a historical show with 60 years of history that you need to learn. I go, doing a starship is, our approach is going to be no different from doing, a World War II period drama. If there's a jet or a fighter or a thing, you would do research and find out what plane it is, how it flies, do all these different things because it's history. It exists. Star Trek's the same thing. It's like all that history is out there. It's all been documented down to the nth degree, and your job is to research it. And it's like, getting people, but like, it's made up. I'm like, but it's not. It's already been made up. So you need to figure out what all those details are. And that's the same thing, when you're looking at Picard's chateau and all those Easter eggs. Well, they're not Easter eggs. They're creating it's world building. It's like, okay, here's this guy's chateau. What would be in someone's house? What would they keep from the past? We all do things. We all keep things from our family and the heirlooms and things like, what are the heirlooms? What can we show that we've seen in the past, so that we show the passage of time? But it's also that, this man doesn't, based on his archives and everything we've seen, he doesn't throw away the past. He holds on to these memories, and that these are part of his life. So it's like, there's, if you go back and you watch the family episode, we just went through and go, okay, pick that, and like anything that was recognizable is in the, there's a painting on the wall that is next to the computer where he's in the family episode. We had the painting, never saw it on the screen because it was on one of the walls, but I'm like, okay, it's there. And we had the plowman sculpture redone because I had someone spend 2 days online trying to find the sculpture and find out who, a version of it or whatever. We couldn't find one. And the decorator was like, well, here's one that's kind of like it. I go, okay, but it's not the same one. So it's like kind of like it. It's like if you did it and it wasn't the same one and they point it out, it's going to actually make it worse because they're going to point it out and it's going to be the wrong one. And then you've got a very long way to proving the point that it's like, oh, we don't actually care because it's not the actual. I want the idea to be that is the same sculpture that his brother had in his house and he's kept it because it's been in the family for centuries. And, so we literally had someone, recarve it and redo it and, made it a focal piece on the set.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Related to what you were saying, actually, in terms of Picard not being a man who throws away the past and stuff, I enjoy a lot of what I see on your Twitter feed, but one of the things that I appreciated the most is there's nothing that you think is disposable. And so I noticed a tweet a few weeks ago where you'd rummage through the bins just to save some stickers that were used on a set, which I really appreciated. I was just curious, is there anything like you've saved from the rubbish, as it were, that you're most proud of having in your house now that would have just been trashed?
It was so incredibly horrible. I just moved from Los Angeles to Toronto, and for all your viewers out there, don't ever do that because you're moving from a different. And I don't know where around the world is probably somewhat different, but in the United States and Canada, everything has to go through customs. So everything has a value. Everything has it's a nightmare. So and then. Also, with the cost of fuel and everything costs $1 billion. So the answer is no. I did not. There was so many things I wanted to save, but in the same moment, I was throwing tons of stuff out or selling it because I couldn't afford to ship it across the country and out of the country. So, but yeah, it was one of those things. I'm like, oh, I want like doors or something. I'm like, oh my god, I can make a headboard out of a bed for that. And, but I worked with, and also, to be fair, on the auction thing, everything is an asset now. Everything, it's like we have lawyers and people going around and grabbing everything. So like the stickers were, something I was like, oh, okay, peel those off. But also that was when I was trying to let my crew know, okay, when we're going from Federation to Confederation or back and forth, we can't screw up. We can't have a sticker show up in the Confederation thing that has the Federation logo on it. So I was literally going through peeling stuff off myself to make sure that it didn't end up in the show. And in fact, one sticker from the Federation did end up in the Confederation time. And I'm like, but stuff like that. But I just remember sneaking back in the early 90s, I was sneaking onto one of the Star Trek sets or like, I think I may have been like in one of the, prop house, they had a piece, but I stole one of the capsule stickers off it and I kept it. I still have it. So I was like, I'm still stealing stickers off a Star Trek set.
Fair enough. Awesome. TK, did you just want to ask the last question then, and then we'll get ready to give this time back?
Yeah, no problem. I was just going to ask, looking back on your career so far, is there anything that you've been most proud of? And going forward, is if the sky was the limit and you could pick any project that you wanted to work on, what would it be?
What am I most proud of? The Stargazer. It's that thing. Did I hit it exactly? No, but it was that thing of going, given all of the things in flux with the pandemic and everything, I think the exterior Stargazer is exactly how I would want to design it. I think getting to collaborate with Doug and John was just amazing. The interior of the ship it was really good. I think that a lot of shows when you watch them, a good example of that would be like Battlestar Galactica. If you watch the pilot of Galactica, the walls and everything were very much brighter, and you can see in between the pilot and the mini series and the series, they darkened everything. They had a chance to kind of course correct. I would have gone a little bit brighter on the walls in the Stargazer bridge and things like that. So you in season 3, when you see starships, you'll see a little bit brighter. But I think that's probably the thing I'm most proud of, because again, I started out as a kid in a little town in Massachusetts and said, to my family and friends, I'm going to go to Hollywood. I'm going to make Star Trek. And they're like, you're an idiot. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. And they're like, okay, well, maybe you should be a little bit more realistic. And I said, no, I'm going to design a starship. That's not realistic. That's fantasy. But it was that thing of going, when I set out on this quest, going back some 45 years, there had been 3 people who had designed been the production designer on Star Trek, going back to the original series, because that was pre, I was already in college at Emerson College when Star Trek: The Next Generation came out. So there you had the movies, you had and then you had the original series. So it's like, this was not an attainable goal. I mean, it was not a logical thing to set out. I'm going to go do something that only 3 or 4 people had ever done. And then to actually be able to do it and have the stars align and, have Marvel's show shut down and be able to jump in and take over Picard and to do all that. And then to sit there, I would have to say that the Stargazer is it. And then I would have to very often check myself, because I've been doing this for so long, but it'd be like, oh my God, I'm on Star Trek. And I would say the biggest time was watching Patrick Stewart. I'm going to say, actually, watching Jean-Luc Picard give his speech at Starfleet, because I'm sitting there running around, 8 million things to go, and he gets up there and he's doing his speech. And I am 30 feet, I'm right behind Elnor. And I had to just stop. And he did the whole speech right through. And I'm sitting there going, stop, focus, take it in the moment. You're at Starfleet Academy. That's Jean-Luc Picard. He's delivering the speech, and you are actually at Starfleet Command. Starfleet Academy. Yeah. And just sitting there, in tears watching it, and then that, and watching the final scene with Picard and Q, and I'm 5 feet away from John Delancey when he reaches down, and he just looks to Patrick and he goes, I want to take your face in my hands. And I'm just dying, oh my God, I can't believe it. And I'm like, yes. And it's just watching these 2 actors play this scene, and it was just oh my God, so yeah, I mean, how do you not, from the little kid who grew up watching Star Trek, I mean, I literally had the Star Trek PlayStation, you spun it around and hit the transporter room, and it's
oh wow.
So yeah, I mean, nothing's going to top that. So that's what I said to my wife, because we were supposed to move up to Toronto in 2020, and so it's been, and we were supposed to be done with Star Trek by the 2021. So I said to her, I said, everything past this is gravy. I mean, it's to sit there and say, this was my life's goal, and how many people can say my goal was to do something beyond possibility, and I did it, stamp, done. And you go, now you can do anything. And it's on my dying thing, I'm like, yeah, I did what I set out to do, and it only took 50 years, but you did it. And it's how cool is that? So yeah, so if people, that's why I'm if people like what I did, that's awesome. If people inspires it, if you didn't like what I did, I mean, I can't write the scripts, I don't do that. If you like my starships, if you thought that they were cool, if you look at that Stargazer and go, yeah, that looks like that's being the same fleet as the Enterprise E and this stuff, and this all works, then I did my job, and and I can rest easy. So, but now it's on to the next adventure. Would I like to do more Star Trek? Sure. What a Star Trek feature or something? But the world's open to possibilities.
Fantastic, yeah.
And, yeah. Again, I would kick myself if I didn't ask. So just one last thing before you go. Then, is there any other kind of spoiler-free teasers you can give us for season 3? Might we see another ship that we haven't seen yet? Maybe.
more. Yeah, you're going to see a ton of ships you haven't seen yet. Yeah, I mean, literally. So by season 3, I had Mike Okuda full time, Doug Drexler full time, John Eads full time, Jim Martin full time. So we just literally season 3 is amazing. It's like there's like at least one episode where I watched it having worked on the show, and it's like, damn, that was good. That was like, it's like, so again, I think Terry was the perfect man for the job. He and his writers did a phenomenal thing, and he every day would push the limits of what we could do. And he's like, no, we got to do better. We got to do this, and just and the seeing the cast back together again, and just it's like the being on set with these people on a daily basis. It's like it was just phenomenal. So again, it's not and I think Terry's already said this. It's like these aren't cameos.
Good.
This is the thing. But I think, and also, Terry did tweet the other day because someone asked. He tweeted something about some interior ship or some detail, and they said, this is this. He tweeted something about a video about him and Doug sitting in the chairs, and someone said, the Stargazer, and he goes, that's not the Stargazer. So I can, he's already confirmed that there will be another hero ship for season 3, and it's not the Stargazer.
Yeah. I think we all know what we hope that to be, but I don't want to get you into any trouble. But I'm crossing my fingers.
Well, I can't. Here's the thing, and I will tweet it, and I'm going to explain. I am going to preemptively mention to people I love the Miranda class ships personally. And for anyone who knows the Miranda class, every bridge on the Miranda class that they've done, it's always looked different. So I get to pull out the canon explanation of the bridge module and how the bridge module, these are designed to bang and go from one ship. And sometimes they look the same.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So it's like, when people are like, that looks like it. I go, well, you know what? Bridge modules, there's a lot of them. So sometimes they look completely different. Sometimes they look very similar. So, so that may be why. But we shot season 2 and we ended on a Friday, and we started shooting season 3 on a Monday. So there was absolutely no time in between the seasons. So our visuals are unique, but I think the fans I have no idea when it's going to hit, but I do know the fans are going to love it.
We'll be keeping an eye on your Twitter page closer to the time as well for more awesome shares and stuff then, because really appreciate it.
Yeah, Terry shares what I get yelled at, so he's they're like, dude, after that first episode, the PR people are like, you're oversharing, and I'm like,
well, we appreciate it anyway.
Definitely
keep the fans happy,
Yeah. No, we were very happy with your work, and I mean, I know that obviously working on Trek would be the reward within itself, but for what it's worth, I really loved your work, particularly in series 2 of Picard. It was so good for me seeing, like you said, the world building of all those familiar ships, seeing the online ships, and even things like a new version of an Excelsior or whatever. It was very much appreciated, and I can't wait for series 3. So
series 3, it's so for people like, are there going to be new ships? Oh yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Awesome.
So people will not be disappointed in the ship porn category.
Nice, like it. Well, I'm going to let you go and get on with the rest of your day, but is there anything you wanted to quickly plug before we let you go?
No, just thank you again for supporting the show, and we hope to see you all soon.
No problem whatsoever. And thanks again for joining us. Truly, it was an honor and a privilege to have you here. So thanks again.
Thank you for giving us your time, Mr. Blass.
All right.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Wow. So, that was quite a big first interview for the channel. So I think we got quite a bit out of Mr. Blass there. And I think I speak for the whole audience when I say we're even more hyped for Series 3 of Picard now. But again, we loved Series 2, didn't we? The cool production design. So thanks again so much to Dave Blass for joining us. If you aren't following him on Twitter, you really should be, because believe me, as he mentioned, he overshares. So you'll see a lot of cool stuff, especially if you're a bit of a geek or a nerd like us. And that's just at Dave Blass, I believe, on Twitter. And fingers crossed that we do get that Art of Picard book that you were talking about, DK.
Definitely. I've just from his what he shared on his Twitter, some of the artwork is just beautiful. It would be amazing to see that in book form.
It's amazing. Plus, it's just seeing somebody who's got such a clear passion for the show. It's a really cool thing to see. So, yeah,
definitely. I wish I'd have kind of brought it up with him, but as a player of Star Trek Online, you felt kind of embraced, like you were actually part of the show, and I really appreciate him doing that, reaching out to the designers behind the game.
Well, everyone, yeah. I mean, like you said, bringing back the likes of Michael Kuda and Drexler and stuff that had been left behind, not through anything vindictive, but just because they were in the past. And like you said, just having the common sense to be like, we can just ask them back, you know. So,
yeah, it's nice to meet someone that is not afraid to draw from those that have gone before him.
It's vital, like he says, it's a visual language, and you've got to know how to design a ship. If you draw it, you've got to know, does it have nacelles? Where are the Bassard collectors? Where's, like you said, where's the phaser strips? Where's the observation lounge, the bridge? And yeah, awesome. So I think I very much appreciate it. I'm still on a bit of a high after that, but very, as I said, very grateful that that was our first interview, because that was an awesome one, and hopefully we've got a few people listening, because I think they'd enjoy a lot of the things we got out of Mr. Blass there. So awesome. Well, as I say, this has been just a random special that we were able to manage to book, but hopefully we might be able to get a few more interviews. Just keep a lookout. You can always find us at HOM-Trek. That's HOM Trek on Twitter. We are Hit or Miss Star Trek on Instagram, or Hit or Miss Star Trek group on Facebook. And that's we also have a sister podcast called the Silver Screen Podcast, where we review just all things film and general movies, and that can be found at podcast_screen on Twitter, Silver Screen Podcast on Instagram and Facebook groups. And you can find both podcasts under Mike's podcast feed everywhere that you get audio podcasts. So that's like Stitcher and Google Podcasts, Shizzle. Apple Podcasts, Shizzle and Dizzle, as I brought up, trying to be funny during the Silver Screen recording. So, if it's got a name and it's a podcast place, you can probably find us there on audio, and you may be listening to this there. So, if so, hello. Do stay tuned to the podcast channel, like I said, for any kind of upcoming treats, and do be aware that, yes, we are coming back with a proper third series of the podcast, where we'll be doing reviews of themed episodes. As mentioned previously, with little fanfare, that'll be a time travel theme. But otherwise, you can find me. I'm personally at Iron Mike Wilson on Twitter, or just my name in most other social media places. DK, where can people find you other than our?
It's AK Star-Lord, but I was going to say, hopefully we'll have some more surprises coming up in the next series of Hit or Miss as well. So.
Yes, indeed. We're growing as a podcast, and we're hoping to have some new surprises and some treats, both small and big, hopefully for you. So if you like this interview, please rate us well, like, comment, share, subscribe, rate 5 stars, all that jazz, and keep on enjoying Star Trek. And I will be heading off now. Do keep tuned to these channels that we are always on. And in the meantime, remember, we are Starfleet. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.